undergo public consultation and parliamentary approval. Campaigners call it a long overdue step to protect consumers from dangerous and deceptive cosmetic practices.
Homelessness minister quits after evicting tenants, reletting home for £700 more, despite earlier pledge to sell.
Rushanara Ali has resigned as homelessness minister after revelations she evicted 4 tenants from her East London property, then re-let it weeks later for £700 more a month. The tenants were told last November their fixed-term contract would not be renewed because the house was being put up for sale. But shortly after leaving, they found it listed for rent again, up from £3,300 to £4,000 a month. Facing mounting criticism from housing charities, renters' rights campaigners, and opposition parties, Ali said she had all times followed the law, but admitted her position had become a distraction.
Her resignation comes despite previous public statements condemning rent exploitation and backing Labour's renters' rights bill, which will soon ban landlords from ending tenancies under the guise of selling before reletting at higher rents. Shelter called the case a damning reminder of systemic unfairness toward renters. Critics labeled it hypocrisy, with the SNP saying Ali should have quit immediately. Prime Minister Keir Starmer thanked Ali for her work, but now faces renewed attacks from Conservatives over sleaze in government.
4-year-old Zahir John dies after being struck by a bus outside Margate Hospital, leaving family and community heartbroken.
The father of a 4-year-old boy who died after being hit by a bus outside a Margate hospital has described his son as always smiling and laughing. Zahir John was struck by a white single-decker stagecoach bus near the entrance to the Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother Hospital's A&E department on Thursday around 16 BST. He had been visiting his grandmother before the tragic incident. His father, Naveed Faizi, called him a sweet and charming boy who smiled even when in pain. According to Kent police, Zahir left the hospital on foot moments before the crash. Emergency staff rushed him back inside, but he was pronounced dead shortly after.
Eyewitness Gillian Murphy said the area was congested with traffic and the bus was struggling to get through before the collision. East Kent Hospital's NHS Trust, Stagecoach, and Kent County Council have all expressed condolences and pledged cooperation with the ongoing police investigation. Authorities are appealing for witnesses or anyone with CCTV or dashcam footage to come forward. The local community has been left in shock, with tributes and flowers placed near the scene. The UK is bracing for its 4th heatwave of this summer, with temperatures set to soar above 30 degrees Celsius next week. The UK Health Security Agency has issued yellow heat health alerts for most regions in England, excluding the northeast and northwest from Monday afternoon until Wednesday evening. Warm air will sweep in from the south, driven by high pressure over southern Britain, interacting with low pressure from the remnants of Tropical Storm Dexter in the Atlantic. England and Wales will bask in the best sunshine, though scattered thunderstorms may interrupt the heat. Scotland and Northern Ireland will see more cloud and rain, with highs still reaching 23 to 25 degrees Celsius in some areas.
Forecasters predict central and southeastern England could see temperatures peaking at 32 to 33 degrees Celsius, though cloud cover and storm activity could influence the exact maximums. The heat may persist into Wednesday, potentially meeting official heat wave criteria in several areas. The scorching spell follows a week of turbulent weather, including Storm Floris's heavy rain and strong winds. By the weekend, cooler Atlantic air is expected to replace the southern flow, but forecasters warn more hot spells may return later in August.
Believed to be one of only a handful growing outdoors in the UK, has been granted a Tree Preservation Order, TPO, following a community campaign. The tropical tree, located on Queenstown Road, was brought from Grenada in the 1980s by local resident Marlene Anderson, who passed away in June. Concerned neighbors had feared it might be cut down, calling it a brilliant landmark. Wandsworth Council's deputy leader, Kemi Akinola, confirmed the TPO, saying it would ensure this beloved local landmark stands for generations to come. A memorial plaque now sits at its base, sharing the tree's history and Miss Anderson's message. Kindly refrain from picking from the tree. You are welcome to gather what nature has let fall.
Grapefruit trees rarely thrive outdoors in the UK's climate, with the Royal Horticultural Society noting they typically require greenhouse conditions. Despite this, the Battersea tree has flourished, producing fragrant flowers and fruit. A media person sampled one of its grapefruits earlier this week, describing it as delicious. Locals see the tree not only as a horticultural rarity, but also a lasting tribute to Miss Anderson's life and heritage.
Jailed NSW officers assaulted naked woman in mental health crisis, sparking outrage and calls for police accountability reform.
2 former NSW police officers have been jailed for a violent assault on a naked woman experiencing a mental health crisis. Nathan Black, 28, and Timothy John Trouch, 30, were sentenced in Sydney's Penrith District Court on Friday to 5 years and 9 months and 5 years and 6 months respectively, with non-parole periods just over 3 years. The incident occurred on 22 January 2023 during a welfare check in Sydney's West. Over an 18-minute period, the officers punched, kicked, dragged, and pepper-sprayed the 48-year-old woman 6 times in total, including on her genitals. She was pushed to the road, kicked twice in the head, and pulled by her hair.
Judge Graham Turnbull described the attack as committed and disgraceful, rejecting claims the officers were in danger. He said the woman may have been best approached in a kindly manner. The woman had been verbally aggressive and not taking prescribed antipsychotic medication, but all charges against her were dropped after body cam footage was reviewed. Acting NSW Police Commissioner David Hudson condemned the actions as unforgivable and one of the worst breaches of police ethics he had seen. Both officers were dismissed from the force.
The 20th International Bat Research Conference in Cairns, Queensland, has been overshadowed by controversy after the Australian government denied visas to 8 invited researchers from Kenya, Uganda, India, Pakistan, and Georgia. Event chair Prof. Justin Welbergen said the decision, made without an appeal process, had disrupted the week-long gathering, which brings together experts from 59 countries to advance bat research, conservation, and disease monitoring. Among those barred was a prominent bat researcher who earned his PhD in Australia. The refusals come amid reports that Immigration Minister Tony Burke has blocked multiple visas, citing, quote, social cohesion concerns. The Department of Home Affairs declined to comment on individual cases, but said all applications are assessed against migration laws, including health, character, and security checks.
A letter signed by nearly 150 delegates urged the government to reconsider its approach, warning the decision risks harming Australia's reputation as a global hub for scientific collaboration. Scientific progress depends on open exchange across borders, the letter read, stressing the importance of research into zoonotic disease surveillance and biodiversity, issues directly relevant to Australia. The conference, held every 3 years since 1968, is in Australia for the first time since 1989.
Gareth Ward quits NSW Parliament after rape conviction, ending his 13-year tenure as Kiama MP amid public outrage.
The New South Wales Parliament has confirmed the resignation of Gareth Ward, the former member for Kiama, following his conviction for sexual assault. Ward, who was found guilty earlier this year of raping a man in 2015, formally stepped down from his parliamentary position on Thursday. Ward, once a rising figure in NSW politics and a former minister in the Berejiklian government, had represented Kaima since 2011. His resignation comes after mounting pressure from fellow MPs, advocacy groups, and the public, who argued that his continued presence in Parliament undermined trust in the institution.
In a brief statement, the NSW Parliament acknowledged receipt of Ward's resignation letter and confirmed a by-election will be held to fill the seat. The resignation brings an end to a turbulent chapter in NSW politics, marked by public outrage and calls for stronger accountability measures for elected officials. Ward had maintained his innocence throughout the trial, but the court found him guilty of sexually assaulting a man at his home. The verdict prompted renewed debate over the standards and vetting processes for political candidates, as well as broader discussions about addressing sexual violence in Australia's political sphere.
Bulldozers raze Queensland forests for pasture, threatening endangered species and coral reefs as oversight gaps widen.
Queensland cleared 332,115 hectares of forest and woodland in 2022 to 23, an area more than 1,000 times the size of Sydney's Central Business District. According to newly released government data, nearly half, 44%, of the land clearing occurred in Great Barrier Reef catchment zones, raising alarms about increased sediment and nutrient runoff into coral ecosystems already stressed by climate change. Environmental groups have condemned the surge, with 21% of the cleared land classified as remnant vegetation, critical habitat for endangered species, such as koalas and greater gliders. The Queensland Conservation Council called the figures shocking, warning that such destruction undermines both biodiversity and reef recovery efforts.
Most of the clearing, 86%, was for pasture expansion, and 77% was classified as Category X, which does not require a permit under current vegetation laws. Conservationists argue that the state's land management regulations are failing, pointing to a worrying 8% increase in remnant forest destruction and a 21% rise in endangered ecosystem clearing. Environmentalists are urging federal intervention, calling on Environment Minister Murray Watt to address the loopholes in upcoming nature law reforms. Advocates warned that without urgent action, Queensland will remain Australia's deforestation epicenter, damaging global biodiversity and fueling the climate crisis.
Sold as dairy-free, found with milk. Boursin's vegan spread recall sparks safety concerns for allergy sufferers.
A popular plant-based spread from Boursin has been urgently recalled across Canada after it was found to contain undeclared milk, a serious allergen for many consumers. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, issued the recall this week, warning that the product may pose a life-threatening risk to individuals with milk allergies. The affected item is the Boursin plant-based garlic and herbs cheese spread, which had been marketed as dairy-free and suitable for vegans. The CFIA's alert followed a consumer complaint that prompted testing, revealing the unexpected presence of milk protein. No allergic reactions have been reported to date, but health officials are urging those with allergies not to consume the product.
Retailers have been instructed to pull the product from shelves, and the manufacturer, Bell Brands USA, is cooperating fully with authorities. Consumers who have purchased the recalled product are advised to discard it or return it for a refund. The recall has raised concerns about allergen control in plant-based manufacturing lines. The CFIA continues to monitor the situation and may expand the recall if further products are affected. This incident underscores the importance of accurate labeling, especially in an era of rising food allergies and vegan alternatives.
400-plus Toronto kids await mentors. 1 hour a week could change their path and rewrite their future.
More than 400 children in Toronto are currently on a wait list for a mentor through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, as the organization struggles with a critical shortage of volunteers. BBBS Toronto says the rising number of children needing guidance, many from underserved communities, has far outpaced the number of available mentors. The result is months-long, sometimes year-long waits for youth to be matched with a big brother or big sister. These kids need someone to talk to, someone to show up for them, said Leanne Nicole, CEO of BBBS Toronto. The longer they wait, the more isolated and at-risk they become.
The mentorship program plays a key role in shaping youth by offering support, building confidence, and helping them avoid negative life paths. Demand has surged in the aftermath of the pandemic, which left many families without community support. BBBS is now urging more Torontonians, especially men and people of color, to step up and volunteer. The group is also seeking corporate partnerships to help fund outreach and training programs. With a simple weekly commitment, a mentor can change a child's life and break the cycle of disconnection.
Sold as dairy-free, found with milk. Boursin's vegan spread recall sparks safety concerns for allergy sufferers.
A popular plant-based spread from Boursin has been urgently recalled across Canada after it was found to contain undeclared milk, a serious allergen for many consumers. The Canadian Food Inspection Agency, CFIA, issued the recall this week, warning that the product may pose a life-threatening risk to individuals with milk allergies. The affected item is the Boursin plant-based garlic and herbs cheese spread, which had been marketed as dairy-free and suitable for vegans. The CFIA's alert followed a consumer complaint that prompted testing, revealing the unexpected presence of milk protein. No allergic reactions have been reported to date, but health officials are urging those with allergies not to consume the product.
Retailers have been instructed to pull the product from shelves, and the manufacturer, Bell Brands USA, is cooperating fully with authorities. Consumers who have purchased the recalled product are advised to discard it or return it for a refund. The recall has raised concerns about allergen control in plant-based manufacturing lines. The CFIA continues to monitor the situation and may expand the recall if further products are affected. This incident underscores the importance of accurate labeling, especially in an era of rising food allergies and vegan alternatives.
Canada's Supreme Court has declined to hear an appeal connected to the high-profile Via Rail terror case, effectively closing the door on further legal challenges in one of the country's most significant terrorism prosecutions. The case stems from the 2013 conviction of Chieb Esseguier and Rod Jazer, who were found guilty of plotting to derail a Via Rail passenger train traveling between Toronto and New York. Prosecutors said the plan, guided by Al-Qaeda ideology, could have caused mass casualties had it succeeded. Both men were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. However, in 2019, the Ontario Court of Appeal ordered a new trial due to a procedural error regarding jury selection. The Supreme Court later reinstated the convictions in 2021, saying the error had not undermined the fairness of the trial.
This week, the Supreme Court dismissed a final application to appeal related legal matters, putting an end to more than a decade of court proceedings. Public safety officials welcomed the decision, calling it a final affirmation of the justice system's handling of terrorism cases. No reasons were provided for the Supreme Court's decision, which is standard practice when declining to hear an appeal.
Australia's gender pay gap persists in 98% of jobs, with motherhood and segregation driving entrenched inequality and shortages.
New research by Jobs and Skills Australia, JSA, has revealed that men are paid more than women in 98% of Australian occupations, with female workers earning on average just 70 cents for every $1 earned by men after a decade in the workforce. The landmark report examined 688 occupations using ATO data and found gender pay disparities even in roles dominated by women. Registered female nurses, for instance, earn 21% less than male colleagues, while men in childcare earn 14% more, despite women making up almost the entire workforce. For First Nations women, the pay gap widens to nearly 40%.
JSA Deputy Commissioner Megan Lilly called the findings a handbrake on the economy, linking the disparities to gender segregation in the labor market and the persistent motherhood penalty, a 55% earnings drop in the 5 years after childbirth. Gender-balanced occupations were associated with smaller pay gaps, yet only 1 in 5 workers is in such a role. Meanwhile, 70% of occupations saw no progress on gender balance in 15 years. Lilly urged policymakers to address these inequalities, stating, "Fix segregation and you fix occupational shortages and gender pay gaps." The findings come ahead of Treasurer Jim Chalmers' upcoming Economic Reform Roundtable.
Bright UFO over Australia identified as Chinese rocket debris, prompting renewed calls for global space junk regulation.
A mysterious object spotted lighting up the night sky across parts of Australia has been identified as debris from a Chinese rocket, not a UFO as initially feared by some locals. The spectacle, seen over Queensland, New South Wales, and the Northern Territory, caused a stir on social media, with witnesses sharing videos of a bright, slow-moving light streaking across the sky. Experts from the Australian Space Agency and astrophysicists quickly confirmed the object was the re-entry of a Long March 3B rocket launched by China to deliver a satellite earlier this month. The rocket stage had been expected to make an uncontrolled descent, and its glowing disintegration during re-entry matched predictions for timing and trajectory.
While the incident posed no known danger to people or property, it has reignited concerns over space debris and the risks of uncontrolled re-entrance. Astronomer Dr. Brad Tucker noted this event highlights the need for stricter international protocols. We're seeing more space junk fall back to Earth, and without coordination, it's only a matter of time before there's a serious incident. Authorities confirmed the debris burned up over remote areas and no recovery operations are underway.
An indigenous group in Queensland has launched legal action to halt construction of a $2.5 billion, 63,000-seat stadium planned for the 2032 Brisbane Olympics, citing cultural and environmental concerns. The Yagara Maganjin Aboriginal Corporation, YMAC, along with Save Victoria Park, has formally requested the Federal Environment Minister to designate Victoria Park as a protected cultural site. Victoria Park, a 60-hectare green space in inner Brisbane, holds deep ancestral significance for Indigenous communities. YMAC spokesperson Gaja Carey Charlton said, "There may be ancient trees, artifacts, ecosystems, and ancestral remains that must be preserved."
The federal government is reviewing the application under the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Heritage Protection Act. If approved, the site may be shielded from development. Brisbane's Lord Mayor insists the stadium will proceed despite mounting protests and legal challenges. The venue is intended to host the Olympic opening and closing ceremonies and become the future home of AFL and cricket in Queensland. As construction deadlines loom, the clash between cultural heritage and global sporting ambitions intensifies, pitting tradition against development in one of Australia's fastest-growing cities.
NHS nurse receives 23 wrongful parking fines despite valid permit, highlighting tech flaws and stress on healthcare workers.
A nurse working at Warwick Hospital received 23 parking fines, totaling nearly £2,000, despite holding a valid staff permit. Mary Bates from Rugby, Warwickshire, began receiving the £85 fines in June after new cameras were installed by Smart Parking, the private company managing the hospital's car park. Bates, who has worked at the hospital since 2019, pays monthly for a permit deducted from her wages. I've got a job where I literally put people back together every day, and I come home to this mess, she told the media persons.
Initially, Smart Parking refused to discuss the charges unless she appealed each one separately. 23 appeals later, only one got canceled, Bates said, fearing court action. After media attention, Smart Parking admitted fault. We have recently changed some of our technology, and unfortunately, it didn't pick up Ms. Bates's valid permit, the firm said. We have now canceled all charges issued in error. South Warwickshire University NHS Foundation Trust confirmed it investigated the issue and worked with the staff member to resolve it. The incident has raised broader concerns about automated enforcement systems and the treatment of NHS staff already under pressure.
NHS nurse receives 23 wrongful parking fines despite valid permit, highlighting tech flaws and stress on healthcare workers.
A nurse working at Warwick Hospital received 23 parking fines, totaling nearly £2,000, despite holding a valid staff permit. Mary Bates from Rugby, Warwickshire, began receiving the £85 fines in June after new cameras were installed by Smart Parking, the private company managing the hospital's car park. Bates, who has worked at the hospital since 2019, pays monthly for a permit deducted from her wages. I've got a job where I literally put people back together every day, and I come home to this mess, she told the media persons.
Initially, Smart Parking refused to discuss the charges unless she appealed each one separately. 23 appeals later, only one got canceled, Bates said, fearing court action. After media attention, Smart Parking admitted fault. We have recently changed some of our technology, and unfortunately, it didn't pick up Ms. Bates's valid permit, the firm said. We have now canceled all charges issued in error. South Warwickshire University NHS Foundation Trust confirmed it investigated the issue and worked with the staff member to resolve it. The incident has raised broader concerns about automated enforcement systems and the treatment of NHS staff already under pressure.
UK's tough new deportation deal kicks off, targeting illegal channel crossings with fast-track removals and legal replacements.
The UK has begun detaining and preparing to deport migrants under a new one-in, one-out agreement with France. The pilot scheme, launched this week, targets those who cross the English Channel illegally in small boats. Home Secretary Yvette Cooper confirmed that migrants arriving after the policy's start will face immediate detention and fast-track returns to France. The first transfers to immigration removal centers began Wednesday, with deportations expected within weeks.
In return, the UK will legally admit an equal number of vetted asylum seekers from France. These individuals must apply via an online platform, pass strict security checks, and file for asylum or a visa within 3 months of arrival.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer said the plan sends a clear message. If you break the law to enter this country, you will face being sent back. As of August 5th, over 25,000 people have crossed the channel in 2025, a 49% increase compared to last year. The scheme faces criticism from conservatives who argue it's insufficient, calling the scrapped Rwanda plan a stronger deterrent. Legal challenges are anticipated, but the government insists it's prepared to defend the policy.
UK universities offer flexibility in admissions, favoring domestic students amid falling international numbers and rising financial strain.
A record number of UK 18-year-olds are expected to secure places at their first-choice universities this year, even if they narrowly miss their grade offers, according to Universities and Colleges Admissions Service, UCAS, Chief Executive Dr. Jo Saxton. She cited growing uncertainty over international student numbers and financial pressures on universities as key reasons behind increased flexibility in admissions. With domestic students offering long-term stability, universities are more likely to accept near-miss applicants. It's a really good year to be a UK-domiciled 18-year-old, said Dr. Saxton, adding that universities see home students as vital for teaching, learning, and financial planning. More offers have been made this year, which UCAS says usually leads to more acceptances. As a result, there will likely be fewer places available in clearing.
Over 22,600 undergraduate courses currently list vacancies in England, including 3,600 from top-tier Russell Group universities. The rise in tuition fees to £9,535, the first increase since 2017, reflects mounting financial strain in the sector. More than 40% of English universities are projected to run at a deficit this year. Applications from 18-year-olds have hit 328,390, though they represent a slightly smaller percentage of the age group due to population growth.
Trump and Putin to meet days before ceasefire deadline as war rages. Ukraine resists Russia's sweeping demands.
The Bank of England has cut interest rates from 4.25% to 4% in a split decision that required an unprecedented second vote by the Monetary Policy Committee. This is the fifth cut since August 2024 and brings borrowing costs to their lowest since March 2023. The decision reflects ongoing concern over persistent inflation, which is now forecast to peak at 4% in September, double the bank's 2% target. Higher food prices, driven by rising labor costs and adverse global weather, are key inflationary pressures. While the rate cut offers relief to borrowers, reducing monthly payments by £40 on a £250,000 variable mortgage, it will also lead to lower returns for savers. Around 600,000 people on tracker mortgages are set to benefit immediately.
Bank Governor Andrew Bailey described the move as, quote, finely balanced, warning that further rate cuts would need to be, quote, gradual and careful. Businesses report having to raise prices, cut staff, and adapt to changing consumer behavior, such as increased demand for value packs and own-label goods. Political reactions were mixed. Chancellor Rachel Reeves welcomed the cut, while opposition MPs called for faster action to address the sluggish economy and high living costs.
UK launches trial to return Channel migrants to France as crossings surge.
Government hopes new plan will deter journeys.
Home Secretary Yvette Cooper has refused to give a specific figure for how many migrants will be returned to France under the UK's new one-in, one-out trial, which begins tomorrow. Under the scheme, some migrants arriving in the UK via small boats will be detained and returned to France if their asylum claims are ruled inadmissible. In return, the UK will accept eligible asylum seekers from France who have not attempted the dangerous Channel crossing. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer hailed the deal with French President Emmanuel Macron as months of grown-up diplomacy that would deliver real results. However, the Conservative opposition argued the plan would make no difference whatsoever.
Universities in the north of England have been left empty-handed in the latest £54 million government talent fund, sparking frustration among academics and regional leaders. The fund, designed to boost research capacity and attract global talent, primarily benefited institutions in London and the South.
Critics say the allocation deepens the north-south divide in higher education and undermines the government's own leveling up agenda. Vice-chancellors in cities like Manchester, Leeds, and Newcastle warned that without fairer distribution, the region risks losing top researchers and innovation opportunities. The Department for Science said allocations were based on strategic impact and project readiness.
U.S. Coast Guard report finds Titan implosion preventable, citing OceanGate's toxic culture, safety failures, and regulatory evasion.
The 2023 implosion of the Titan submersible, which killed all 5 people on board during the voyage to the Titanic wreck, was a preventable tragedy caused by inadequate safety practices, deliberate oversight avoidance, and a toxic workplace culture, the U.S. Coast Guard has concluded. The final 300-page report, released Tuesday after a 2-year investigation, paints a damning portrait of OceanGate and its late CEO, Stockton Rush, accusing the company of ignoring and suppressing safety concerns to evade regulatory scrutiny. Investigators found that design flaws, lack of certification, poor maintenance, and a retaliation against employees who raised warnings contributed to the disaster. The Titan had even been stored outdoors in a Canadian winter, exposing it to repeated freeze-thaw cycles that likely weakened its hull.
Rush, who died in the implosion along with Paul-Henri Nargeolet, Hamish Harding, and Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood, would likely have faced criminal charges had he survived, the report stated. Families of the victims and investigators have called for stricter regulations for submersible operators to prevent future tragedies. The Dawood family said accountability and industry reform are the only fitting legacy for those lost. U.S. Coast Guard report finds Titan implosion preventable, citing OceanGate's toxic culture, safety failures, and regulatory evasion.
The 2023 implosion of the Titan submersible, which killed all 5 people on board during the voyage to the Titanic wreck, was a preventable tragedy caused by inadequate safety practices, deliberate oversight avoidance, and a toxic workplace culture, the U.S. Coast Guard has concluded. The final 300-page report, released Tuesday after a 2-year investigation, paints a damning portrait of OceanGate and its late CEO, Stockton Rush, accusing the company of ignoring and suppressing safety concerns to evade regulatory scrutiny. Investigators found that design flaws, lack of certification, poor maintenance, and a retaliation against employees who raised warnings contributed to the disaster. The Titan had even been stored outdoors in a Canadian winter, exposing it to repeated freeze-thaw cycles that likely weakened its hull.
Rush, who died in the implosion along with Paul-Henri Nargeolet, Hamish Harding and Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood would likely have faced criminal charges had he survived, the report stated. Families of the victims and investigators have called for stricter regulations for submersible operators to prevent future tragedies. The Dawood family said accountability and industry reform are the only fitting legacy for those lost.
RCMP intercepts 44 asylum seekers and arrests 3 smugglers near Stansted Quay as cross-border migration pressures intensify.
Canadian authorities intercepted 44 asylum seekers and arrested 3 alleged smugglers near Stansted, Quebec, during an overnight border operation on Sunday. Royal Canadian Mounted Police officers, assisted by provincial police, stopped a truck carrying the group, which included children, near Haskell Road. The asylum seekers were transported to the Canada Border Services Agency (CBSA) office in Stansted for processing. CBSA District Director Miguel Bagan said most of the migrants were moved to the St. Bernard de la Colle Regional Processing Center for asylum eligibility screening. Some have already been returned to the United States under the Safe Third Country Agreement, which prevents most asylum claims at official Canada-U.S. land crossings.
The 3 alleged smugglers have been charged under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act for aiding illegal entry and remain in provincial custody. They are scheduled to appear in court on August 6th. The interception comes amid heightened political focus on border crossings. U.S. President Donald Trump has repeatedly linked irregular crossings and drug trafficking to his administration's decision to impose higher tariffs on Canada. CBSA reported over 3,000 asylum requests at the Stansted crossing in July 2025, up sharply from 600 the previous year.
Canadian wildfires send smoke into the U.S., triggering flight delays and air quality alerts from Midwest to Northeast cities.
Hundreds of wildfires burning in Canada are blanketing parts of the United States with smoke, prompting air quality alerts and travel disruptions. As of Monday, 742 wildfires were active across Canada, including 201 out of control, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Centre. Thick smoke drifted across the upper Midwest and Northeast, making skies hazy from Green Bay to Boston and delaying flights at Logan International Airport due to low visibility.
Air quality alerts were issued for at least 8 states, including Wisconsin, Michigan, and New York. In some regions of northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan's Upper Peninsula, air quality reached unhealthy levels for all individuals, while other areas issued warnings for vulnerable populations, including people with asthma or heart conditions. Detroit briefly recorded the 3rd worst air quality among major cities worldwide, while New York and Boston experienced hazy skies reminiscent of the 2023 wildfire season, though less severe. Officials urge residents under alerts to limit outdoor activity, keep windows closed, and monitor local advisories. Smoke is expected to linger through at least Tuesday as fires continue in Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Alberta, and British Columbia.
Canada is cracking down on copy-paste refugee claims using AI and pattern analysis to protect its asylum system.
Canadian immigration officials are increasingly relying on advanced detection tools, including artificial intelligence, to identify plagiarized refugee claims. According to the Immigration and Refugee Board, IRB, duplicated narratives are flagged when multiple asylum seekers submit nearly identical personal stories, often lifted from online forums or prepared by unscrupulous consultants. Officials say such templated claims compromise the integrity integrity of the refugee system and slow down legitimate cases. Sophisticated software scans applications for patterns in phrasing, structure, and key details. If two or more claims contain strikingly similar language, they're marked for further investigation.
In 2024, over 1,200 refugee claims were reportedly found to contain significant similarities. IRB spokesperson Carla Johnson said each refugee story must reflect a unique personal experience. Copy-pasting someone else's trauma not only undermines real claims, but risks rejection. Legal experts warn that some claimants may not realize they've submitted plagiarized content, relying on third parties to file paperwork. Authorities are now urging asylum seekers to seek advice only from licensed immigration consultants or lawyers. The IRB is also planning public awareness campaigns in high refugee source countries to discourage template-based applications and reduce abuse of Canada's asylum system.
Girl Guides cancel U.S. trips to protect members from discriminatory border risks. Safety and inclusion come first.
The Girl Guides of Canada have suspended all travel to the United States, citing concerns over border restrictions that could lead to some members being turned away. The organization announced the decision after growing uncertainty about how new U.S. immigration policies might impact girls and leaders, particularly those from marginalized communities. In a statement, the organization said the move aims to ensure all members feel safe, included, and respected, regardless of their background. "We can't take the risk that a girl could be denied entry at the border," said a spokesperson. The Girl Guides emphasized that their values of inclusivity and equal opportunity outweigh the benefits of cross-border travel.
Instead of trips to the U.S., the organization plans to offer alternative travel experiences within Canada, ensuring members still gain cultural and leadership opportunities. This is believed to be the first time the century-old institution has taken such a step in response to political and border concerns. Critics have applauded the move as a stand for inclusion, while others called it premature. The decision reflects growing anxiety among Canadian institutions over changes to U.S. immigration and border enforcement policies under recent administrations.
U.S. Coast Guard report finds Titan implosion preventable, citing OceanGate's toxic culture, safety failures, and regulatory evasion.
The 2023 implosion of the Titan submersible, which killed all 5 people on board during the voyage to the Titanic wreck, was a preventable tragedy caused by inadequate safety practices, deliberate oversight avoidance, and a toxic workplace culture, the U.S. Coast Guard has concluded. The final 300-page report, released Tuesday after a 2-year investigation, paints a damning portrait of OceanGate and its late CEO, Stockton Rush, accusing the company of ignoring and suppressing safety concerns to evade regulatory scrutiny. Investigators found that design flaws, lack of certification, poor maintenance, and retaliation against employees who raised warnings contributed to the disaster. The Titan had even been stored outdoors in a Canadian winter, exposing it to repeated freeze-thaw cycles that likely weakened its hull.
Rush, who died in the implosion along with Paul Henri Nargalet, Hamish Harding, and Shahzada and Suleiman Dawood, would likely have faced criminal charges had he survived, the report stated. Families of the victims and investigators have called for stricter regulations for submersible operators to prevent future tragedies. The Dawood family said accountability and industry reform are the only fitting legacy for those lost.
U.S. introduces $15,000 visa bond for some foreign visitors to prevent overstays, sparking debate over travel and fairness.
The United States has introduced a 12-month pilot program requiring certain foreign nationals to pay a bond of up to $15,000 to obtain a tourist or business visa. According to a notice published by the State Department, the initiative targets travelers from countries with high visa overstay rates or inadequate security and vetting systems. Nationals who acquire citizenship through investment programs without residency requirements may also be affected. The program applies to B1 and B2 visa applicants, typically issued for short-term business or tourism. Consular officers will determine the bond amount on a case-by-case basis. The deposit will be refunded if the visitor departs the United States within their authorized stay.
Officials say the measure is intended to reduce the number of visitors who remain in the country illegally. Immigration lawyers, however, warn that the program could discourage legitimate travel and strain international relations, particularly with nations whose citizens are disproportionately affected. The announcement comes amid broader efforts by the Trump administration to tighten U.S. immigration controls, including expanded travel bans and increased visa scrutiny.
The FBI has confirmed that violent crime in the U.S. fell to its lowest level in decades in 2024, strengthening President Joe Biden's argument that his administration oversaw a safer nation despite relentless Republican attacks on crime. According to the Bureau's annual reported crimes in the nation's statistics, violent crime fell 4.5% year on year, with murders dropping 14.5%, rapes 5.2%, robberies 8.9%, and aggravated assaults 3%. Murders in America's largest cities fell 19.1%, contradicting Donald Trump's 2024 campaign claims that Democratic cities were out of control.
Biden officials have cited the data as evidence that investments in community policing, public safety funding, and post-pandemic economic stability are paying off. Trump, who repeatedly warned of a national crime wave during his campaign and while on trial in New York, now faces an FBI report showing 2024 crime rates mirrored the 1960s historic lows. The report also noted 13,683 hate crime offenses, 64 officers killed, and a decade-high 87,530 assaults on law enforcement. Analysts say 2025 could see the lowest murder rate ever recorded, despite persistent underreporting challenges.
Girl Guides cancel U.S. trips to protect members from discriminatory border risks. Safety and inclusion come first.
Rising wealth inequality is quietly reshaping the way Americans date and form relationships. According to the 2022 Survey of Consumer Finances, the top 1% of U.S. households now control 35% of all wealth, leaving younger and lower-income adults struggling to match the stability enjoyed by earlier generations. Analysts say this financial imbalance increasingly dictates dating choices, with many singles seeking partners within similar income brackets. Major coastal cities like New York, San Francisco, and Seattle are hotbeds of concentrated wealth where high earners tend to date each other. Meanwhile, those with fewer resources often feel pushed out of competitive dating markets or delay serious relationships altogether.
Sociologists note that financial pressure impacts romance at every stage, from choosing where to meet to deciding whether to marry or have children. In lower-income regions, economic instability contributes to delayed family formation and higher breakup rates. Experts warn that unless income gaps narrow, the dating wealth divide will deepen, shaping not only personal relationships but also broader social patterns in cities and communities.
Automated job seeker payment cancellations ruled unlawful as Ombudsman urges overhaul of compliance system and Greens